The topic we've decided to present today is displaying data for maximum effort and how to simplify data to get to the main point. Have you ever seen something like this before? You're sitting in class or sitting in a meeting taking notes, and this pops up on the presentation, and you have no idea where to start. There's just way too much information that our mind doesn't know where to start. We can't comprehend it all at once. So the data is just confusing because we don't even want to look at it because there's so much of it. So graphs and charts help us to simplify large amounts of information into a smaller format for us to read. Graphs and charts are a great tool for anybody to use when they're simplifying information to an audience that isn't aware of the information or isn't aware of the data. We'll be going over the following within this presentation. First, how to simplify the data to get to the point. Second, why we need to simplify the data. Third is how to visually represent your simplified data. And then within that, which types of charts and graphs are the best to be used for certain situations.
Now, how to simplify data. First thing you need to do is just establish the key points. What things of the data that you want to show the audience or whoever you're trying to give your data to, and then just get to the point. Then after that, just who's the audience? It depends on if it's a teacher or a boss or even a kindergartner. You have to simplify it down and make sure you just throw out unnecessary data. And that's the next point. Throw out unnecessary data and make sure that it's all simplified, that it all makes sense for certain people. And then the next point, you're just going to draw conclusions for what data or what visual aid is going to be best for the data. And then after that, just reemphasize the key ideas. Now on this next slide, here's an example of a research center survey that they did for teens. And here's the data sheet. No one can understand what's going on here. It has too many things going on and it just doesn't make sense. So first we just got to establish our key ideas. Knowing the sheet, I established, okay, this is what I'm going to go for, this question. And so I'm going to throw out the unnecessary data. And now we have that and simplify it. Now it's all simplified right here in a nice little table, and it shows the question, shows the answers, and even the responses. Now I have to figure out some visual aid. Now this visual aid doesn't make sense. So it's not just find some visual aid and just throw it on there, but find the right visual aid. Now finding the right visual aid is very key. Now here, a pie chart makes it a lot easier, makes a lot of sense, and makes it so that people can understand what the question is asked and what are the answers. And just reemphasize your key ideas. But remember, who is the audience? Make sure that you know what they need and how they can understand it.
So why do we simplify data? Here's an example of a very unsimplified data set. This shows world track and field records from all athletes of all countries, shows times, event, all that. And if we only really want to know the relevant content, and if that relevant content to us is who from the United States and or the United Kingdom have set world records, this is the data set we need to look at. It's the same information, same chart. It's just a more simplified, easier to understand version. We've got the United States, got the United Kingdom on there. It sifts out everything that we don't need to know, and it gives us everything we do need to know. So once again, why do we simplify data? Data can be extremely complex and really hard to comprehend. There's a lot of data out there, and understanding and knowing the relevant content or having the relevant content makes life a lot easier for us. So simplifying our data allows our audience to better comprehend, and also in a business setting, from a business standpoint, helps make better and more informed decisions. I know for me personally, the company that I work for, I review all of our digital marketing. And every month I get a digital marketing report, and there's a lot of data on there, which is all great for me, but I have to go through and basically simplify that data to only the relevant data that my boss or the owner wants to see. At the end of the day, he cares about seeing how many leads we've gotten from our ads, how many of those leads have been converted into sales, and what we are truly getting out of our marketing ads. So by presenting him with the relevant data, it allows us collectively to make better business decisions moving forward on how we need to adjust our marketing strategy and just overall make better business decisions. So that's why we simplify data, make life easier for all of us.
Now, once we've simplified the data, it's important that we can accurately present the data to our audience. Now, charts and graphs are used when a data table isn't the best way to portray any correlations or trends from the data. And the best thing to do is to keep the charts simple and straight to the point. It's very helpful if the chart is specifically what you want to show so that there's not anything extra crowding or taking away from the key points you're trying to make. Now, like Ty talked about earlier, we are trying to pick the best graph that fits for what we're trying to portray. Now, I'm going to show you 3 different options that are useful in different circumstances. And the first one is the line graph. So line graphs are used to track changes over short and long periods of time, as well as correlation between the data points. As you can see in this example, you can see the trend rise up and then decline towards the end. And that is not something that would be prevalent or obvious from just looking at a data table. And when smaller changes exist, it is better to look at a line graph as opposed to a bar graph. And that is because this line graph has each and every point, and you can see even the smallest shift between the points and see how they correlate with one another as the x-axis moves upwards. Now, with a bar graph, it is generally used for tracking data over time as well as differences between groups. Now, if you take a look at this example, you can see the difference between Europe and South America is pretty prevalent. However, in a data set, you wouldn't really be able to notice that difference as quickly or as accurately. And this is able to accurately portray what we're trying to show with the trend and the correlation. And this is why with bar graphs, it's better to have larger changes since they don't show each specific point, but they show the general points under each section. Now, the last thing is a pie chart. So you can use a pie chart to compare a data set and compare parts to a whole. So they don't show any changes over time, but it does portray the different aspects of the data. So you have your large group, and then each section of the pie chart shows a different either answer or portrayal of the data. If you're taking a survey, it's how often each answer is given or provided, or how often a product is used in each circumstance. So these are just 3 examples of different charts and graphs that you can use to present your data, but each different graph represents a different aspect of the data, so it is important to understand what you're trying to represent with your data and pick your graph accordingly.
So, simplifying data is crucial when presenting to an audience that isn't familiar with the data set. When simplifying data, the first thing to do is establish your key point, throw out any unnecessary data, draw a conclusion with visual evidence, and re-emphasize your points. We need to figure out what the data is trying to portray. This helps us to better understand the data. When making charts and graphs, we want to understand what the data is portraying. So, charts present data in a different way to show trends. The best thing to do is keep it simple, have nothing unnecessary in there. When you're visually representing your data with a graph or a chart, there is a variety of options. We only went over a few within this presentation, but there are a ton that can be used when you want to visually represent your data to an audience.